Surfin does too. I'm wondering what those more people.
Excellent.
Oh, you're overseeing this panel too.
I am on the panel.
Yes.
Blow this what you want me? Yeah, sure.
So we can.
I am
put your laptop in.
There's a power strip underneath.
The MAGWest way.
You can play chapters like Lewis is coming over just a bit.
Yeah. We've been redirecting everyone from every chip panel to the next.
We're good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about the wait, the delay. Great, we lost 7 minutes. All right, first, welcome to MAGWest. It's really awesome that we can have something on this side of the country that kind of gets all of us video game music fans together in one spot. I've been trying to go to MAGFest for years, and it came to me, so yeah. I'm pretty happy. So Pixelated Audio it's a podcast that we've been doing for about 3 years, myself, Brian, and James. And we've never done anything live before. We usually just record. It's just kind of a hobby thing. But today we thought we'd kind of do something fun and present something that's kind of important to us, talk about the Sega Genesis. And also we have a guest with us today. But before we talk about our guest, just a little bit about our show. We have been doing it again, like I said, for 3 years, and we typically focus on one system or one sound chip, one game,
kind
of
of series.
at a time.
We try to keep it small. Episodes get long, that kind of thing. Sometimes we try to have the composers on from those games, and we've been fortunate enough to have composers like Barry Leach, Chris Hulsbeck, Matt Furness, and Japanese composers like Masahiro Kajihara, Takushi Hiyamuta, and Iwadare. So thankfully we've gotten to talk to these guys and see what they think about music, how it their inspirations and stuff like that. So but today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're straying a little bit away from our
normal
stuff.
Yeah. So today we have a special guest with us. We have actually 2 guests with us today. I don't know if you guys saw Lewis's panel earlier about FM synthesis. It was incredible. I kind of wish he would have followed us because it would have made more sense after
same room.
But we do have a special guest with us. He is a really big chiptune artist and very important to the community. He's an excellent composer and a walking encyclopedia of sound chip knowledge. So we're very fortunate to have him. This is Brendan Becker, better known as Inverse Phase.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. First of all, before we get into the topic and stuff, kind of want to talk to you about how you got involved with MAGWest, because you're kind of a big player here now, right?
That is like 3 panels all unto itself. But long story short, MAGWest is put on by MAGFest, and I was involved with it for about 10 years and kind of ran the show along with some of the other ragtag trio people you see running around, Paul and Dom being the ones that you've probably seen more prominently or whatever. So we just formed a team and decided to run a thing, and it got so big that we could bring it to you.
Yeah. And you write your own chip tunes, you release albums, do live shows, stuff like that. You can see, I couldn't even fit when I was making a clip art of his website. Couldn't even fit all the albums he did on one page. I kind of had to shrink it down a little bit, but he's put out a ton of stuff.
Tons of game composers at MAGFest, so it was a nice jump-off point to be able to meet a lot of the people that, I've brought on to MAGFest and, just talk shop with them. And as soon as I backed off, I was like, well, what am I going to do now? I guess I could write music, and I've been doing it ever since. So.
Cool. And we got some tracks to play from you later on.
Very true.
In the panel, too. Also, we have another guest with us, Lewis. How's it going?
Hey, it's going pretty good.
Yeah, so tell us about yourself. You just did a panel on FM synthesis.
Yeah, so I just did a panel about DOS FM synthesis, more specifically the OPL tube from Yamaha, which is used in the Adlib sound card. And we kind of walked through writing a bit of a track and some of the sound design and compositional techniques. And that was fun. And then, we headed over here to check this out.
Cool. Everything all right? The best.
Recording.
Good idea.
Yeah, so we're recording this. We're going to be releasing it in a few days on our podcast for everyone. So people not here can also listen to today's panel.
Right. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll be talking to these guys more as we kind of go through some of the tracks. So we have some tracks lined up today that we want to play, kind of share, maybe kind of off the beaten path of what most people typically think of as Sega Genesis music. You know, we had your Sonics, your Restar, your Streets of Rage, like this guy's hat over here. We're going to try to deviate a little bit and play some stuff maybe you haven't heard.
That's kind of our thing. We tend to focus on more obscure music that deserves attention. There's plenty of video game music podcasts out there that play your Marios and Zeldas and stuff like that. So we like to dig into a lot of rare systems or systems that didn't come here or games that were just completely overlooked on popular systems.
Yeah, and he's an artist. So if you guys look down at your badge, he actually did the design for it. He did all the MAGWest badges this year. So it looked pretty awesome.
Had a fun time designing the badges this year. It was cool working with not only being able to be on a panel, but also to supply some artwork for the first MAGFest or MAGWest. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is being an engineer and an artist, we have not a lot of musical experience. So everything that we do on the podcast is kind of like our look as, through an engineer's eyes, through an artist's eyes. And so it's kind of a weird mashup of our opinions and stuff. So
right, and we consider ourselves a little bit of a historical and preservation podcast. We play all the games that we talk about. We figure out the controls. We dig into how the game was made, if there was any interesting tips or research tricks and stuff like that, and just enjoy the entire game. But we tend to focus on the music. That's kind of how we pick our episodes. But it's always great when you find a game that has good music and is a fun game to play.
Awesome. So let's get into today's panel topic. Today we're going to be talking about the Sega Genesis and its sound capabilities.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Blast processing.
Yeah,
has anyone blast processed this weekend?
I have.
Okay. That's
Twice
good.
this morning.
Good.
Twice?
Twice this morning.
Wow. Hope you didn't do it in the pool.
Why'd we decide on doing the Sega Genesis? We could have done, PC 88, PC 98, and we were thinking about doing it actually, but MAGWest this year, the kind of theme is Sonic, right? So we thought, okay, let's kind of look at the Sega Genesis and listen to some tracks that maybe you haven't heard yet. So we're gonna
and it's an interesting machine in and of itself. So.
All right, so let me flip the slide here.
Does it make noise?
Is that you making that noise?
Oh, nice. Little added production value.
I can be the comic relief guy and maybe a translator every now and then.
Yeah. So kind of brief history on the Sega Genesis, the Mega Drive. So in the 80s, Nintendo had like a huge presence, and and the NES and the Famicom dominated the market. And despite what Sega tried to put out, they just couldn't put a dent in Nintendo. They were a beast. They couldn't keep up. The Famicom was released in 1983 in Japan, and then the same year, Sega released the SG-1000.
Yeah, and I actually think it was the same day, too.
Same day. So they were putting themselves up for doom right away.
Right.
They set themselves up for doom as much as Atari, which released the 2600 just a few months before the Famicom hit.
Right.
Yeah.
That was
Japan.
At least it wasn't
their
the same
marketing
day.
team needed.
Well, it wasn't the same day. And the SG-1000 is like a ColecoVision level system, where the Famicom was
A step above.
A step
was a
above.
step,
Still
yeah.
well loved.
Yeah.
Maybe we should check with everyone who here has heard of a Sega Master System. Keep your hands up.
All right.
Oh
Here.
God, that's awesome.
Okay, so
That's awesome.
So of those people, who has heard of the Mark III? Okay, still pretty
still
solid.
awesome.
And has anyone seen the Mark I or the original SG-1000? 1, 2, 3.
Nice.
Yep.
I love
Okay,
those
pretty
colors.
solid. Okay.
Those colors are great. I wish we would still have those designs. Anyway, so 2 years later, Sega tried again after releasing the SG-1000. They released the Mark III, which was kind of like, it was a capable machine, but it just wasn't doing what Nintendo was doing. The joystick was a little odd. It had some different color or scrolling issues and stuff, and it just really couldn't keep up. But did that just change on its own? No, it came back.
Blinked.
So when let's see here. So Sega releases the SG-1000. 2 years later, they released the Mark III, which later evolved into the Sega Master System that we got here in the States and Europe. But in the States and in Japan, the Mark III, or the Sega Master System, never really took off. And,
it's unfortunate.
Yeah, but in Europe, it got a ton of praise and it was really popular. But without having the Japanese and American audience having a strong presence in those markets, it just was kind of setting itself up for failure.
Right.
So
Sega at this point is looking a little bit desperate.
So in the mid to late 80s, arcade hardware was getting really big. There was the System 1, Sega System 1, Sega System 2, and people were going crazy for it. It was getting to the point where it was becoming a lot more powerful than what the NES could do, that was already, had strong legs. So Sega, they had a strong presence in the coin-op market, and they saw something that they thought, we have this presence. How can we bring this coin-op experience into the home? How can we bring it into people's houses so that they can have the same kind of feeling that you get when you go to the arcade? And that's kind of what the idea of the Sega Genesis came to be. So with that, they started working on the Sega Genesis, and it was codenamed the Mark V. And their initial thoughts were to have it just succeed the Sega System 1 and System 2 arcade boards. But after learning of the Super Nintendo and what it was capable of, they actually kind of shifted their focus to make it something closer to the Sega System 16, games like Altered Beast, Alex Kidd, Wonder Boy 3, stuff like that, so that they can have more of a one-up on Nintendo again.
Well, it made sense. They were such beasts in the arcade industry. Why not make a system that allows them to port over a lot of the stuff that people already like, that they can play in their homes, and give them kind of a nice injection of fans and people wanting to pick up their systems.
Right, and so with that, they released the Mega Drive in Japan, and that was released on October 29th of 1988, and then they released it in North America as the Sega Genesis in 1989. And I found it funny that, does anybody know why they named it the Sega Genesis here in the States?
There was already a tech company called Mega Drive.
Yeah. So there was a tech company that made hard drives, and it was like Mega Drive Systems or something like that. And so they had to change the name. And I think that company is like maybe Milpitas. I'm not quite sure.
If it was a tech company in the year.
Yeah. So it's just funny that we're the only ones, just because of that naming, we had to change it up. But let's go ahead and let's see here. Yes. Oh, so I wanted to put this in here, and James and I were kind of talking like, why is this relevant? But so when the Sega Genesis was released, they were putting ads in magazines trying to get people hyped up, and the Sega ads were always really like serious. Like they wanted.
Yeah, you see, it's very dark colors. It's not bright and fun looking, and even their tagline is it's kind of like, once you play this, your life is going to be different. So it was very interesting to see it compared to how the same system was displayed and marketed in Japan.
Yeah, so we have a Japanese ad here.
Which is vastly different. It looks so much fun. Lots of color.
Sugoi.
Yeah. I even think that guy in the top corner, you can see the cavities in his teeth. Like they didn't do any photoshopping or anything. They did really good. But yeah, it was a lot more wacky. It was more like crazy, in your face, trying to get everybody pumped up. There's one thing I do want to point out about this slide, which is kind of cool, is if you zoom in here, there's three main points. One is visual shock. The graphics, what you can see. The next one is the speed shock because of this blast processing. And the third one is FM sound source plus PSG sound source plus PCM sound source equals sound shock.
I always wondered
shock.
where that came from on the Alien Soldier title screen. Now I know. And there's an FM community called Sound Shock from the
right.
early 2000s to about mid 2000s, from what I remember. And there's also been they put out 3 FM funk albums, compilations, various artists. But yeah, that's it.
But if you look, he definitely looks shocked by the sound. So they nailed it.
Cool. So let's get into, let's listen to a track. So we figured we'd start with something that's a little more recognizable. We don't have to listen to the whole thing, but this is Hyperstone Heist, which is an incredible soundtrack on the Sega Genesis. Many of you guys know it. I'm sure there's Ninja Turtle fans. Anybody above 30 is going to be a huge Turtle fan. So let's just take a listen to it real quick, and then we'll kind of go through and look at the channels.
But yeah, we're going to do some fun stuff with listening to the music, showing how the two different chips work together, and we got some visual aids here to help illustrate that.
That might just go to the projector, though, not the PA.
Oh, not the PA.
So we're.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
PA.
That's, yeah. FM synthesis. We just did it.
All right. Problem solved.
Yeah, so as you guys know, that was Hyperstone Heist, or also it's called Return of the Shredder in Japan, which came out in Japan, in the US in 1992, in Europe in 1993.
Did anybody play Turtles in Time or any of the...
Hell yeah.
This is pretty much that, right? It's like the Turtles arcade game, but for the Genesis. It's actually pretty good, and the soundtrack is awesome. So if you haven't played, I think they even have it running downstairs in the arcade.
Just requested.
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, excellent soundtrack. And let's see if I can move over to the slide here. Okay, so let's talk about the Sega Genesis hardware for a second before we talk a little bit more about this track. All right, so it's composed of two different chips, and let's start with the PSG real quick, and we're gonna have Brendan tell us about it.
Okay, so the PSG is actually also the sound chip that's in the Master System, and they brought it over into the Genesis because, again, as we were talking about, it was the Mark V, it was the evolution of the Master System originally, and they wanted to maintain backwards compatibility. So the PSG is the SN76489, and a whole bunch of other scary numbers like SN94624, TMS9919, SN76496, and there's an NCR clone of this, and it offers you 3 square waves that are 50%. You can't change the timbre of the square wave at all, or the duty cycle if you write NES music.
There is one exception.
But you can use the white noise as a low frequency buzzer.
Right. Yeah.
To get and that's a trick that actually was not used much until later in the Master System game.
Yeah, you'll find it in a couple European Master System games, but you barely ever hear it. I think it's a feature that wasn't in the documentation, so people were probably afraid to really dig into it.
Go listen to Marble Madness for the Master System. That's a good example, or something like that.
I really recommend the Alien 3
Oh,
soundtrack.
yeah, Alien 3 is a great example.
That title of music, I can just listen to that all day. And
Was that was Furnace, right?
yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
You also have white noise, which is a linear shift feedback register, and it kind of sounds like banging on trash can lids. There's the other modes of the white noise are you have like a low, medium, high, white noise, or you can tie it to channel 3 and pick any frequency you want for your white noise. And a lot of people. Well, and I think, you have the third channel being muted. Usually people would use it as a variable, sort of periodic noise sort of thing. But you could just have the white noise and choose any frequency if you had it in that mode. And you can actually, if you listen to Afterburner for the Master System, you can leave the third channel on. You just have to signal it, and you get that sort of extra tone added to the white noise. So that's another, and usually the way you accomplish that trick is just by signaling a volume immediately after starting the sound. But that's a trick.
But in the office, Sega probably got tired of saying the whole chip name over and over to everybody, so they just called it the Sega PSG. Yeah, that's
programmable sound generator.
Yep.
So.
And that's used in a bunch of other systems too, right?
Right.
ColecoVision, TI-99, BBC Micro, all have the same sound
Game
chip.
Gear, Neo Geo Pocket.
And that makes sense because doesn't the SG-1000 also share the video chip with the ColecoVision and MSX?
Yeah. So let's move on to our next one here.
Next.
All right, so there's something kind of important about this ad that we showed earlier that kind of correlates or kind of gives the reasoning for why the Sega PSG was included in the Sega Genesis. Can anybody notice that? Call it right off.
The power base.
Bingo. Yeah, so the
Nailed
power
it.
base. Yeah.
Also, that modem that's a lie.
I know. I was so bummed out. The modem got canceled and the port of VET got canceled, and I was just so bummed about both of those. I was really looking forward to them.
At least we had X-Band later.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
not
true.
that it was that great, but it filled the gap that we wanted it to, I suppose.
Sega
Right.
Channel.
Sega Channel, yeah.
Yeah.
Did anybody have Sega Channel? You
Damn.
did?
Nice.
Probably the one person in the Bay Area. I think my cousin had it, and that was it.
If anyone's interested, I recently found out that there are Sega CD compilations released in Japan with the Sega Channel games. That are like the exclusive games.
Gotta get them.
Nice.
Yeah.
The version of Teddy Boy in that is just phenomenal.
And also, Fatal Labyrinth actually got
Yeah.
released on cartridge after being a really successful, online game from Telenet, right?
Yeah. It was cool too. It was developed at the same time as Fatal Labyrinth as Dragon Crystal for the Game Gear and
Yep.
SMS,
Which is close to the same and really good.
Yeah, they share a lot of the same stuff, and I really recommend it. If you like roguelikes, I love that one to bits.
So why don't you tell us about the power base? Because
So
there's not a lot to it.
Yeah, the power base is a very, very fancy looking pin adapter. So the Sega Genesis literally has that master system inside of it, and all you have to do to change the Genesis into master system mode is like hold one of the pins high or something like that. So it's literally just the master system form factor is different from the Genesis form factor, and it's an adapter. Like you can build it out of a circuit board and two edge connectors. And in fact, someone does that. Dude in Canada, not thinking.
DB
clearly.
Electronics.
Yes, thank you. DB has an adapter for like $20 if you can't find a power base converter
And
that does.
He makes something really cool too, and I pounced on this as soon as it came out because I just had to have it. So the Master System had an FM add-on, and he actually makes a cartridge for the Genesis that adds that capability to your Master System games. So there's like 20 Master System games that do support FM, released in Japan. The FM was released in Japan. It wasn't released here. The game's code for the FM is still in there, even if you get the U.S. releases. So you can plug them into your Genesis, and you can play these Master System games on your Genesis with enhanced sound. It's awesome.
Secret unlocked.
It's super cheap. Someone buy me one,
It's
please.
like $40 or something.
But you could see right from the beginning that when Sega was advertising this, they were very conscious about making it backwards compatible. I mean, this ad is showing all their launch games, and it's showing all the extra add-ons you could get right from the start. So it was very much in their forethought, making Master System games still playable on this new console.
Yeah. So when the Genesis came out, though, they wanted to work on what they had before and make it backwards compatible. They wanted to get something new, kind of closer to the arcades, and that's why the YM2612 was added to the Sega Genesis. And the 2612 is actually kind of an interesting chip because at the time there was obviously more powerful chips, the 2608 and a lot of other arcade chipsets were doing more, had samples, had that PSG even built in, but they wanted something that was cost effective. So they added, they had Yamaha create this 2612 that didn't have the PSG included, and that also could do some PCM. So let's move over to this next one here. So, Brendan, please.
All right, so the 2612 is the OPN2, which is a successor to the OPN1, or just OPN, which is the YM2203. And so part of that whole PSG thing that we were talking about, the YM2203 is 3 4-operator FM channels and 3 SSG is what Yamaha calls PSG. And so when they decided to evolve the chip, they went to 6 channels of FM, and Sega obviously broke off the PSG into its own thing. And then, the 2608 is, I believe, the OPN-A.
OPN-A.
And that sort of a thing. So all of the OPN chips have that 6-channel FM thing going on. and they're all 4-op, and they all have the same waveform choices, and they're all very close to each other. But since Sega's trying to save money, since they've already shoinked the the PSG over, this chip was very cost effective. They made the 6th channel a switchable DAC, so you could send out PCM sound out of channel 6, or you could use it for extra FM if you wanted. You could also break out channel 3 into all 4 operators and control them individually, which was kind of a neat trick for doing. Say you wanted to do really simple chords or that sort of a thing. You could use a simple instrument and write out all of those notes instead of having to create an instrument or busy up a bunch of channels.
I don't think I've ever heard that. Is there a game that uses it, or?
There are a few, I think.
I think there's a few.
I've got some
I can't-
tracks that use it if you want to hear. I was just going to say, all of the other arcade machines at the time, especially Sega's, were mostly using the YM2151,
Right.
which is 8 channels, not 6, but it's still a 4-operator chip. And so that's why one of the leading causes of the 2612 and the Genesis is they wanted to take their 4-operator stuff on something they had already written and not have to spend a lot of work porting that soundtrack over to the other system or the other chip.
Right. And so YM, does anybody familiar with why Yamaha had exclusive licensing for all these sound chips in the 80s and 90s? Yeah. Well, real quick, kind of history lesson here. So FM synthesis, it wasn't just some process that was created in a lab at some big company. It was actually just down the road here at Stanford University. There was a professor by the name of John Chowning, and he was fascinated with electronic music, and he was researching different ways to compose music on the computer. And one night in 1967, he was in one of the labs experimenting with basically really exaggerated vibratos using a couple of oscillators, having one control the output of the other tone and stuff like that. And he stumbled upon something really unique. So around 50 hertz, he noticed that if he kept the vibrato constant, alternating the waveform, the waveform would actually get more rich and deep in harmonics, and the higher he went, the more deep it became. So Stanford saw this, and they were like, "Oh, we have something here. We have something we can market. We can make money off this." And they went to Hammond, the organ manufacturer here in the States, and they were like, "Hey, what do you guys think? Do you want to use this in your organs?" And they were kind of like, "We don't see the application here. We're gonna pass." And so Stanford went to a few other manufacturers of different things like organs and other instruments, and everybody kind of turned him down until Yamaha got into a contract with him and got exclusive rights for about 20 years. So 1975 all the way until 1994, Yamaha had total dominance on the algorithm that they created. So there's a little history in FM synthesis. That's why we have it today.
Lots of different chips ending up in a lot of different systems, a lot of different arcades. So they kind of had everything on lock for a while.
And it might have been a really bad thing had Yamaha not had exclusive rights. We may have had Sega Genesis with something completely different in it, like some weird TI thing or something. Who knows? So.
Possibly Casio,
Worth
because then they tried to.
Worth mentioning too is that the FM in Yamaha's FM isn't really, it's not modulating the pitch. They found a better way, which is kind of modulating the phase. And when you got 2 sine waves, it's the same thing. But when you start stacking them, if you're just doing basically fast vibrato, it starts getting knocked out of tune. So they kind of created an equivalent method, but that doesn't have tuning problems. And I believe that's what's patented, right? Not vibrato.
They lost it, so I don't remember what happened after that. So let's listen to, real quick, that same track that we heard earlier. We have the FM and the PSG, the 2 chips separated, so we can kind of look at what their roles are and how composers use them on the Sega Genesis. So.
Right, and over the course of other songs we're going to listen to, you'll see how different composers use the PSG in different ways or choose to not really use it at all.
So you can see the white waveforms that we're looking at, those are all FM, and then the green at the bottom here that's kind of hanging out by itself, that's actually channel 6 in DAC mode. And so that's why channel 6 is just a flat line. It's not doing anything because we're actually showing it in DAC mode here.
So you can see the FM is carrying the bulk of the load of this song. almost sounds like it's not really missing anything at this point.
And it's easy to kind of miss some of the PSG when you're listening to a track because it's so well hidden in the back, or it just has a very good accompanying role. But it does a lot, and it really enhances what we heard on the Genesis. So yeah, the YM2612 combo with Sega PSG wasn't the first attempt at Sega's home iteration of trying FM. Something kind of interesting with the Japanese version of the Master System. You want to tell us about that?
So the Mark III had a little FM expansion unit that you could slide on and plug in and that sort of a thing. And after they brought out the Master System in the US and Europe with the new design, they were like, well, maybe we should go back to our Japanese market and try and use that cool new design and add all of our cool expansions that we offer with the Mark III, and they came out with 3D glasses and that sort of thing. So they built that all into, like the final Mark IV, Sega. So there's, with the US 3D glasses, for example, there's a card that goes into the card slot down there. But if you notice, this is a Japanese Master System. So there's just a little headphone jack to the right. And normally, the US 3D glasses plug into the headphone jack on the card. Now they plug into that, freeing up the card slot. The FM is built into the system instead of an expansion unit. They basically thought of all of the extra things. And so now they were like, well, now we've got all of this extra cool stuff all at the same time. Maybe we should give it a really cool intro screen. And if you remember the old Sega, the Mark III just has a thing that like fades on and fades off.
Right.
And then the Sega Master System in the US and Europe markets has the, whoop, Sega, except in beep boops. And so then they wanted to one-up themselves again and again, make this really their flagship system. And so they decided to implement Space Harrier into the BIOS and play both FM and PSG at the same time. So there's that. I don't know if you can see it, but the stars flash to the
beat. So, yeah, like that's a really cool example of how they used the YM2413, but there was a lot of games that tried to do similar things and it just kind of fell flat. There wasn't a lot really, I can't think of a lot of good stuff that was done
with both
right. At that time. I think it was kind of...
So one of the reasons that is because the sound driver, whenever you're developing games for a system or whatever, you have this kind of like default kit that you use to put together the games with. And they wanted to still be able to support their Mark III market, and those people might not have had FM.
Right.
So they would implement FM and PSG soundtracks, and their sound driver knew how to just switch over when FM was available. But since the PSG only had 3 channels, there would be a lot of 3-channel FM stuff that would just use instruments on the FM chip. Exactly. That kind of sounded about right. Like, oh, that's the bass instrument. Okay, use like tuba or something. So you didn't get, I think there are like a couple homebrews that really take advantage of it well.
There's only homebrew that I know that's anywhere decent. Yeah. So
most of the Master System games you'll find just use either FM or PSG, and the FM is very basic because they want it to be cross-compatible. Compatible. Yeah.
Let's get into another track. We're already running out of time. Yeah. So this is a track called Mountain Peak from Yu Yu Hakusho. Has anybody played the game? Soundtrack is incredible, so let's take a listen real quick. that was Mountain Peak from Yu Yu Hakusho on the Sega Genesis Mega Drive in 1994. And it was composed by Katsuhiko Suzuki. And we just wanted to add this in because it's another good example of strong use of the PSG and it complementing the YM2612. So here's kind of what the game looks like. It's a fighting game. So if you ever played it, it's kind of like I don't think it ever came out to America, but I think it came out to Brazil, and that's why there's some English stuff in there.
This game saw limited release in Brazil and in Japan, which is kind of interesting. But this is actually the 10th game in this franchise series, which is based on an anime and manga. So this is not their first use of these characters at all.
So if you're coming from the Crunchyroll conference, maybe you know it. I don't know. So here's the FM by itself. Kind of take a listen. Here is the PSG. I can't see your head is in the way, bud.
You got it to start.
So a little more simple. A lot of PSG was used for sound effects and then just, your simple kind of background tones like this. Cool, and then we're going to get another track. This is called Flood of Power from Midnight Resistance.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, which has a great soundtrack.
Yeah, we got a couple that we got to get to before this is over.
I think a cool thing to note in this track is that the drums you're hearing are not DAC drums, they're FM synthesis. So someone actually went through the pains of creating a drum patch out of, like harmonics and that sort of a thing, which we saw earlier.
Which Lewis knows all about. So Midnight Resistance, this was a port of an arcade game.
It was ported to pretty much every system, including the Genesis.
Z64 even.
Yeah,
all
Atari,
played.
Amstrad.
It's one of those games too
all that.
where every port of it kind of rocks. Like I don't think I played a bad port of Midnight Resistance. Like I played like the ZX Spectrum one. I don't know if you know that computer, but it's very limited, and even that one is pretty kick-ass.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, my favorite one's the Genesis one, though. Of course, and my favorite song in that is the second level thing, which is just like killer.
Yeah, it's an amazing soundtrack.
Well, so we already know what the 2612 looks like because we were just looking at it, but just listen to the PSG real quick by itself. I got to go backwards. I think it's playing.
It takes a second.
Kind of had a little.
It's so eerie and sad.
Some serious hall reverb on that. Long delay echo.
That's my favorite kind of music.
And it's just a lot more of that.
I love how sad that sounds compared to the upbeat one with all the channels. Like if you out of context, it's completely is a different song.
Yeah, sometimes
Different
you listen to the
mood.
PSG and it's like so sad and depressing, and then you listen to how it works with the FM and it's like completely different, happy, bouncy track.
I love those kinds of leads though, the square wave leads with the little echo trail and all the tuning behind them because it sounds so haunting and just deep.
All right, so next, this is from Gauntlet 4. It's called Transparent Obstacle.
That soundtrack has amazing patch design.
Yeah.
So good.
They really knew what they were doing.
quick, Gauntlet 4 was kind of unique, right?
So Gauntlet 4 has the original Gauntlet in it, but then its own adventure that's very console-like.
Right.
That we can go up and down floors too. Like so, you're not just going one way, and there's kind of 3D mazes that use that, and it's more of a not a proper adventure game, but it has those elements.
Yeah,
sure.
it has
It's
some-
really
yeah.
cool.
Another thing to note about this game is it was the first instance of a 4-player Sega Genesis game.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
I don't know. If,
Multi-tab.
I'm getting to the point where a lot of people haven't played Gauntlet because it's such an old game, and man, you just get 4 friends, get any incarnation of Gauntlet you can get your hands on, and it's just an awesome time.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
So let's just quickly look at the FM here because it was doing something kind of interesting. first part, right? Compare that with what the PSG was doing. It kind of has this beautiful chaos to it. And it's simple, and it just kind of repeats this over and over, but I think it adds so much extra depth and kind of eeriness to the track. They didn't need to use PSG at all, but they decided this is the best use for what they wanted to do.
So a lot of these tracks are really full. Do they reserve a channel for sound effects, or do they just cut one of the music channels? How do they swing that with a lot of these?
A lot of these games would just either cut a channel, or it's kind of like a gate, right? When one channel plays through, or when a sound effect goes through, it opens the gate on another one, closes the gate on the other one.
I see.
So it's kind of like that.
There are a lot of sound drivers that will actually let you assign priority to certain channels, so that those channels always play, and that the ones that don't have good priority can drop out, so that the sound effects can take over.
I see, yeah. It's less obvious than it is on like the Amiga, where you only have 4 channels, and so if one drops, you really hear it.
Yeah.
So we have one last track before we get into inverse phase music. This is called Bad Fairy from Rolling Thunder 3, which was another exclusive to the Sega Genesis. Take a listen.
Is this the one that's like a straight up rip of Megalith by T-Square?
What?
The first level of music of Rolling Thunder 3 is a rip of Megalith.
Oh, maybe.
Which is great.
We'll take a listen. Let us know.
All right.
Verdict.
Yeah, that's not the one. That's
So Rolling Thunder 3 was, it's the third game in the Rolling Thunder series. The first 2 were in the arcades, and then the third one made its way to the Sega Genesis, and it was a kind of a home console only. The music is incredible.
Yeah.
Composed by Rose and Dick Boy. I can't find their actual names, but that's what we got. So
When in Japan.
Yeah. Everybody's using pseudonyms. Nobody knows anybody but
James Banana.
James Banana.
Well, we know who that is.
Well, I'm
now,
glad
but-
mine's not Dick Boy.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna pass this over to Inverse Phase here, so we can listen to some of his tracks.
Cool. Can I grab your cable? I don't need that, but...
Oh, just this one?
Yeah. I mean, unless people want... sorry.
Might be
You
kinda
can
nice
you
to
can
see.
watch it in the tracker if you want. Do we? Yeah, I guess.
It's always fun to see music instead of just hearing it.
Yeah.
It says
especially Deflemask, which has that cool mask picture on the screen at all times.
Hey, there we go. All right. So I figured we'd start off with something that is a really awful joke called "Pinch It Off," and this is the earlier version of the song was called "Easy Poop." So one or the other.
Pinch it off.
One of my favorite things to do with Sega music, with the whole PSG FM thing, is start off really simple. and then kind of build up and kind of change the person's mind while they're listening to it. Like they're like, oh, this is beepy boopy, sounds like a video game, and then blam, like I'm a big fan of that. And there's a lot of old game music that does that as well. So I guess I'm sort of influenced by that. So in this one, I wanted to start off with kind of a simple chord that doesn't use the PSG, and then kind of bring in. I like to use the PSG as either accompaniment or my lead instrument a lot, just because I really like the whole pure square wave tone. So here I have everything broken out. So FM1 through FM6 are all of your FM channels, and SN is for SN76489. This is the PSG, and that last one, 4, is the white noise. You'll see me ignoring 3 a decent amount because I like messing around with my white noise. So I'll just go ahead and play, and you can watch. Maybe turn things on and off kind of while the song is playing so that you can hear different pieces of the song. And then you'll get a combined waveform up in here. Let's see if I can maybe... So here I'm using like the PSG as a hi-hat actually, and then putting only a kick drum and a snare in my DAC channel. And you can see FM3 and SN1 are doubling as a sort of lead instrument here. If you couldn't tell, I was going for a club banger. But one of the things is I wanted my kick drum to be really heavy, and here's the DAC on its own. The kick is really, really not heavy, so I added an FM kick that really helps that out. And then of course the bass instrument over here. So you get really thick layered bass that way.
So you're doing a DAC kick as well as
DAC and PSG at the same time.
Oh, and PSG at the same time,
Yeah.
not FM. Okay.
So, or DAC and FM for the kick, but then also I go over here for my hi-hats and
Gotcha.
extra noise. And right now it's doing this thing, which you can barely hear. That is the periodic noise that we were talking about. So you can get that tinny sound. But and you hear me doing kind of a chill out noise with this. So every techno song kind of has that chill out and warm up mode. So this is like my chill out. But then what happens here, I'm stopping it for a second. So usually if you're, was anyone at the Grimecraft show last night? Really? Only like 2 people? Or any of the DJ shows? Have you been to a DJ show in the club where there is actually someone in front of mixing decks? So you'll hear the guy turn a high pass or a low pass filter. He's really just playing with his frequency knobs, and it gives you an instant, kind of, sort of the sound either opens up or closes down and that sort of a thing. Well, none of these FM chips have a frequency knob, so to speak, like that. Of course you can mess with the frequency, but you kind of have to fake it. So I taught myself to fake it.
Fake it till you make it.
And that kind of gives you an idea of what I do. And then we're back to, playing club banger, side chaining stuff. Some of the SN76489 stuff I'm doing is like this thing. But then you notice...
A little more complex.
So all of my leads are actually over here. And I'm also, you notice every once in a while I play them at the same time, slightly detuned to give a literal inverse phase effect. And then over here, then I mix the sine wave in with, my SN76489. So that gives you maybe the idea of how, a track can use both in maybe a slightly different way, but still an effective way.
all of this guy's music, if you check it out, all of it's doing something unique that sometimes shouldn't be happening on that sound chip. So I highly invite you to check out his Bandcamp. and throw some money at him, and download some of his music. It's pretty excellent. And I found out about this guy way before we asked him to be on.
We've been asking him to be on the show for a while, and this just turned out to be the perfect
perfect
meetup.
Is anyone into Stranger Things?
Yeah, who's not?
So I'm skipping to the end of this one, but there's another thing that some of us FM composers like to do called FM slaps, where you basically you start modulating your bass or some other instrument, and you modulate it a lot so that you can get all sorts of different timbres out of one channel, and you just kind of use it as sort of a jazzy thing where you want to start messing with people. So at the end of I have a Stranger Things on the Sega track called Sega Things. And this is kind of getting even more meta because the Stranger Things theme could be considered, synthwave or retrowave or whatever. But another term for that is actually called outrun. So I wrote outrun on a Sega, and I don't know. That's probably like
impressive.
Three levels of meta synth joke there. But anyway,
when people call it outrun, I get really confused because the genre name came from the Kavinsky album. But it doesn't sound at all like the music from the game Outrun, even though he's posing with a Ferrari on the cover. So I always expect Outrun style music to sound like Gloria Estefan or something, that the Outrun soundtrack was kind of imitating. And instead, it sounds like synthwave. So I'm like, what's going on?
So anyway, here's a chunk of that so you can hear, And I slowly crack the bass out a little bit more and more as the song goes on. Probably heard a bunch of those sound effects as or a bunch of those as sound effects in arcade games or especially old Atari games that use the 2151. They were the first guys to get access to it, so they would overdrive all of the operators on all of their soundtracks, and you'd get a lot of just interesting weird stuff. So that's a lot of fun to mess with.
Awesome. Yeah. So check out his Bandcamp and download some of his stuff. Tell us a little bit about your stuff.
I go by Extent of the Jam, and I do a lot of FM funk stuff, partly with this chip sometimes with the OPL2, some of the other stuff. I've got a Bandcamp as well. It's just extentofthejam.bandcamp.com, and I also have a SoundCloud with a bunch of miscellaneous stuff on there.
Putting out albums, stuff like that too?
I keep meaning to put out an album, and I'm just an expert procrastinator. So I have one EP, and it's I picked a few of my favorite tracks, and I kind of mastered it all together and threw it up there. But yeah.
Do we have time for a game? Oh yeah.
Really?
So do we have time for a quick
Does anyone want to do some name that tune or except with a twist?
It's kind of a twist. If you listen to Sega Genesis music, you might get some of them, or you might hear it.
Oh, okay.
This will take 10 minutes.
That's enough time.
Let's say 10 minutes. Good. Okay.
All right. Forgive the noise.
All right. So we're gonna play some Genesis tracks, and that was the first one.
Jam it in there.
So we're gonna play some Genesis tracks and see if you guys can guess what some of these are. Let me set it up here real quick.
Yeah, it won't be the full song. It's gonna be some stuff turned off and.
Yeah, it's called Name That Bass.
When will the bass drop?
So I'm gonna start with here.
We have some that we think are relatively easy, and then we have some that are a little bit harder. So
let's try this out. Is it playing?
Yeah. So here's the first one.
Just shout it out if you know it. Yeah.
That was an easy one.
All right. So let's see the next one here. This is a little bit harder, but I think it's still pretty obvious. We're gonna have the first channel on, which is the bass and the DAC, so it's a little bit easier. I thought that would have given it away.
On the tip of your tongue.
Come on, Anthony. You know this one.
What was that?
No. Nope. I'll turn on another channel. That didn't really help.
Maybe now.
You know it, don't you?
Has anyone ever worked at GameStop? Maybe you got a call about this game.
Yeah.
Battletoads. There you go.
Have a problem with pimples or zits?
Is it in? Do you carry it? Do you sell
Carry
it?
it.
How much?
All right, so this is actually a well-known game.
Or game series?
Yeah. So we'll see if you get this one. It's a little bit. No. This is kind of a hard one.
Trick question.
It's a little bit of a trick. It's a popular franchise, but not known for being on the Genesis. This is also not a very helpful.
Yeah. So you got it? No, not a Disney game. Well, if I turn on channel 1 here. Yep.
Yeah.
Mega Man 2. Wily Wars.
So that's obviously a system or a game that you don't really think of on the Genesis, but it appeared, so it got FM versions of a lot of the songs, which is kind of neat.
So here's another one. Yeah, I knew it. I was like, everybody's gonna get this one right away. All right, let's see what we got next. You guys are getting way more than I expected. I was like, oh man, I don't even get these.
I personally like this soundtrack a lot. And we did an episode on this game.
Gotta love that like crunchy break beat going on there.
Yeah.
This game also had a Game Gear port, so it's just PSG.
Reminds me of Tony.
The Game Gear port's phenomenal. The Game Gear, rather.
There you go, restart. Yeah.
It feels good.
That's such a great soundtrack.
Yeah, we did an entire episode on that one. We had so much fun.
Yeah.
It's a great game, too. It's an amazing game. Unfortunately, it came out so late in the Genesis life cycle.
It's way underrated.
Oh, nice.
Good.
Oh, nice. So
And if you like the Genesis one, the Game Gear one is a really good port, but it also has some extra different levels.
I think they subtracted a level.
I think they did, but you also get like the pirate ship and stuff that you didn't get in like.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've never played the Game Gear version.
Oh, you gotta check it out. It's excellent.
All right, so the next one here, let's take a listen. Oh, this starts off kind of slow. This is like a really famous outside of the Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
As soon as I turn on one of these channels, you're gonna know right away. All right. Ghosts and Ghouls, they're all the same.
I always get those mixed up anyway.
Ghosts and Ghouls and Goblins.
Yeah.
Ghosts and stuff.
G&G, that's it. That's all I...
Yeah, that was an awful joke. I'm sorry.
All right. We got like 2 more left.
This one should be pretty noticeable.
Yeah.
Dang.
Man, we got the game too. We got the exact track.
Love
Who wrote it?
track.
Do you know the composer? There you go, Howard Drawson. Who also
Sweet.
composed Comic Zone is another good one by him.
Almost had Comic Zone in here. Oh,
Yeah.
I shouldn't
Oh,
say that.
yeah.
Now you're not gonna know.
Shit, spoilers.
You should put Thunder Force 4 on the list, man.
For what?
Oh. Just a list of stuff we're listening to, because that soundtrack's so freaking crazy.
All right. So here's one that might throw you for another spin. As soon as I turn off one channel, you're gonna know right away. Yep.
Bloodlines. We also did an episode on this game. It's got a really great soundtrack. It's a really underrated.
And there's
Castlevania
a few classic tunes in that one, so we pulled that out and put it in. Let's see. We got one. Oh, this is way too easy. I don't know why we put this on here. All right.
Well, you got 3 to pick from.
Yeah, Toxic Zone. Yeah, good.
If people are guessing the
Casino
other
Zone.
stuff, then this is a breeze.
That was fast. I think we could maybe do one more.
Oh, we got one more. Okay. This is a little bit hard. Maybe not.
For that?
It is Street Fighter. You know what track?
Whose theme?
Yep.
Yeah.
Kyle. All right. We got one more. Do we have time? We have 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you seen the Chiptunes Equals meme album where every track had to work in Guile's theme in some way or another?
I have seen that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, that was quick.
Is that opening riff, man? That's a giveaway.
Was it the bass intro that goes up and down? That that's the giveaway.
Awesome.
But yeah, so that's gonna pretty much wrap it up.
We went 15 minutes over, so thank you guys for sticking around, and really appreciate you coming out to MAGWest and then checking us out. here in
Coming
our-
up, by the way, there's a laptop musician panel, and people that have been following the Famitracker to FM to here may be interested in the laptop musician panel. I think
Oh,
it's
yeah.
happening next door.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in the jam space again.
Okay.
So
This is right across from here.
so there's that, and
Well,
yeah, thanks
I
for
guess,
joining us. We'll
yeah.
probably lurk a little bit while other people set up. If you wanted to ask us some questions,
Yeah,
or-
but if you want to know more about our podcast, you can find us on our website at pixelatedaudio.com, and we're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, Discord, and Patreon. So,
Yeah.
so
If
we're
you
all
wanna-
over the place.
If you want to check out some of our past episodes too, we just did one with
Abo.
Abo-san. Yeah. We did. We had Starfire for the PC-98, and we did an interview with him, and it was a lot of fun. And
Insane soundtrack, incredibly amazing composer, totally underrated.
then right, and then before that, a few episodes before that, we had Iwata-san, the composer of Lunar, the Lunar series. We had him on, talk to him about his composition. He played ocarina for us.
Yeah, he played some live instruments for us. It was very
pretty
cool.
wild. So yeah, thank you guys so much for attending MAGWest and attending this panel, and check out the feed and for our next episodes. So thank you very much.
Oh, I'm not supposed to clap. Fucking, I'm in the audience somehow. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Clap right to the
Everything.
You were just so...
I was.
Thanks.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, really cool. I guess we did more than just survive.
I use a whole ton of them, but this specific one is Deflemask.
Oh, that's totally
DEFLE. Well, you can see it up top. Yeah.
Especially,
And it's a multi-system
especially since it's the
tracker,
first
which
year,
is really nice.
You got so many new people